So you guys asked me quite a lot of questions in the last year. I want to just say thank you guys so much for all of the love and the support you have sent me, for all the many different things that I do. Um, and I'm going to answer this question in particular because it seems to keep coming up from the Impostors. When I was with a group called the Impostors, as you guys know, Mr. Danny Love started the group The Impostors, and since then he has passed on. Now, the reason I stayed with the group, The Impostors, and for those of you that don't know who The Impostors are, they were a celebrity troupe of female impersonators that used to travel around Canada and the US and do different skits and shows and impersonations, and they were very popular, especially in Canada. And then they performed with Frankie Goes to Hollywood and a few other different groups. Now, before Mr. Danny Love passed on, he talked to me a lot about the group once I joined the group. Like I said before, I am from Orlando, Florida, but I grew up in Fort Lauderdale and Miami. So Danny, the agent, called me in Fort Lauderdale and offered me the job here in Canada um, to work with the Impostors. Now, a friend of mine that was in another show here that was actually in the Impostors but wanted to move to another show decided that he did not want to be in that the Impostors show anymore. So once his contract was up, he was going to move to this other show. Now, me, I was going to school. Well, actually, I had just graduated nursing school, and I was doing really well. I had my own apartment, everything was going great. The agent called and offered me a job with the Impostors here in Canada. So I was very hesitant about that because I was new to drag. I hadn't done drag, in a professional sense. I was just doing the talent nights, and I seemed to be winning all the talent nights. So that was my start. But back then, I also used to lift weights. I was very skinny, but I was very muscular. So, and I used to do aerobics and all these things, and I was very athletic. So I wasn't the most feminine looking woman back then. Things have changed since then. But I've learned how to put the two together now to make the magic work on stage and sometimes off stage. But anyways, so like I said, is Danny, the agent, called me in my Fort Lauderdale and offered me the job. But before he hung up the phone, Danny Love got on the phone, who actually owned the group. And he says, listen, Lee, that's what they used to call us in the Impostors, because you had to have a name that could either be male and female. So that's why we had different names than Stephanie Stevens. I was going by Lee Stevens. So it could either be a woman or a man. So this is how the group operated, and they really focused on the art of female impersonation. This was not a trans group, or none of us identified as trans at the time. We were all just men dressing up in drag, and we were female impersonators, and that's the way we did our show. So Danny Love got on the phone. He said, look, girl, we need a black entertainer. Black people are coming to see us, and they're complaining that there's no black people in the show. Do you want to be in the show? We would love to have you in the show. And I love the fact that he was straight up with me, and that's what made me join the Impostors. But when once I left the Impostors, I went to another show called An Evening at La Cage. La Cage was a traveling group, and they were more advanced. They had bigger budgets, they had bigger shows, they had fabulous queens, and I wanted to be a part of that show because there was more money, there was more opportunity, and there was just the fact that they traveled the world was what was more interesting to me, because I wanted to see the world. And then they offered me a job. So once I was in St. Martin with the La Cage show, they phoned me and told me that Danny was in bad shape in the hospital here, and so I came back to Toronto to see Danny, and he was in the hospital, and they said he wasn't going to make it. So, but the whole time I was there, I stayed, I think, 5 days. In the 5 days, the first 3 days, he didn't talk at all. The next, like 2 days before I was getting ready to leave, I was feeding him and everything. And then he kind of talked to me a little bit, like slow, and I could understand barely what he was saying. And he kept telling me to keep the group going and to make sure that the guys stayed working. And you know me, I didn't want that responsibility of trying to keep the imposters going or anything like that, because I figured, I hadn't done my time. I was done with the group. I didn't want nothing else to do with it. But I felt obligated to him because he gave me my first job. Now, professional job. So this is why I stayed with the imposters. Part 2 coming up.